If you've watched my last video, or I suppose rather listened to it, I think I have the ethos to make this one. But if you don't necessarily believe that, then here's my ethos. I got addicted to porn at 15, quit it cold turkey to get with a beautiful girl from my youth ministry. Um, at 16, we were both 16. Um, quit it. That was amazing for a year. But then her and I let sexual intimacy into our relationship. And so the second half of our relationship slowly became, it became what dominated our love, leading to her leaving me at 19. And towards the end of our relationship, I was making her send me nudes, and then when that wouldn't fulfill me, I got back into porn towards the end of that previously beautiful relationship. And then after she left, I just back in the cycle. And so this, I say this after only being clean, if you want to call it that, which I would say is a valid way to call it because porn is definitely an addiction. I say this only of being clean for about 6 weeks, but that's no masturbation, no porn at all, and I think that's good, right? For me, um, considering how cyclical my life has been, any window of time is a success for me. But the way I beat porn, right? I quit it cold turkey to get with my now ex, but we were 16. I was a youth leader, with her at the time. We were leading middle school groups, which we ended up doing for basically the rest of our relationship. It was our one of our constant forms of ministry, and it was amazing. But I was actively struggling with porn before I became a group leader. Um, I was just as bad as could be, really. We're talking like 3 times a day. Um, Before school, a couple times after school. We're talking back to back. You know, if the first one didn't, the first orgasm didn't hit right, you just run it right back. I mean, bottom tier, right? Addiction to porn, and I was looking up the craziest content. I mean, maybe not the craziest, but I was getting close, right? I know that there's worse stuff. There's, bestiality and whatnot, but in just I was watching porn that was entirely disrespectful to women. Well, all porn is disrespectful to women, but stuff that woman, the fact that she would willingly subject herself to the things I was watching was it's just overall concerning. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is how I got over it, or at least how I got on the winning side of it now. Um, when I was 16, when I knew that I wanted to pursue this woman, this girl in my youth group, I knew that I wanted to date her. I also knew that I had to quit porn to do that. I was like, I can't lead this woman properly if I'm just looking at other women naked all the time. And so what I did was this girl became an example of pure, righteous female beauty that I could love and appreciate as a perfect work of art made by the hand of God, right? And that became the logic I used to convince myself that to reduce her to, nudity or, sexual sin would be just entirely disrespectful and ultimately convince myself it was unacceptable. And, I have an appreciation for, a couple of forms of art. I'm big into music, right? Especially just vocalization. Um, People like Aurora, with just blessed voices that can do things with their voices that are extremely rare and just in that way entirely beautiful. Same with traditional art like paintings, sculptures, right? Um, I kind of think about it like to reduce a woman to just the parts of her body is basically just looking at a painting and tearing it apart into individual pieces and saying that, you know, this corner is a better depiction of the entire art piece than the art piece itself, if that makes any sense. Um, and that's just absolutely not true. To reduce a woman to lusting over her, to the parts of her body is it's disrespectful to the work of art that every woman is. And this is just true of every woman that they as a Christian, I believe that they have been made by a perfect being who loves them infinitely, and thus they have been created a unique amalgamation which in their entirety is perfect. Um, Now, not perfect in that women aren't, sinners, but perfect in that if you just take the physical part of them, you've basically taken a piece off of something that is whole and perfect in its entirety, and you've taken a piece and now made it imperfect. Um, the way I initially, did this though, was that, as at 16, I had that view of this girl that I liked, and then I came up with other examples of it. Other examples of female beauty that I could appreciate, that I could logically convince myself of, that weren't basically not necessarily worth, but it just wasn't understandable to reduce them to nudity. And the reason I did it like that is because in high school, 15 to 16, when I was the worst of the worst, at least for me, in my addiction to porn, I would take literally every female celebrity I could think of. Like if one popped in my mind, first thing I would do, look up their nudes. And that gave me, you know, a sense of, power and control, as if that was some form of kind of masculinity, right? And I felt good. I was like, I got this power over these women kind of thing, because I was narcissistic and egotistical and extremely prideful at that time in my life, and so I basically reverse engineered that to, and the first woman I used was Anya Taylor-Joy, actually, aside from my ex, who, when I defined the way that I perceived her, then I just kind of applied that to other women. I used Anya Taylor-Joy because um, she's beautiful, of course, and a great actress, and I was like, I could just look up what she looks like naked, but it shows a greater appreciation for her and a more authentic caring for her as a person, um, to just refuse to see her naked, right? And that might sound a little foreign, a little odd, right? It might not even sound feasible to some people. I don't think anybody is incapable of doing that, of convincing themselves of that, because I don't think any of us are inherently evil. So it's not like, oh, I can't see women as anything other than their bodies. You might have yourself convinced of that, but I don't think it's true. Um, and this is why I'm such a big, basically, supporter of mental intimacy, because of course the best and the deepest love I've ever held is the love that I had for my ex but I have so many friends that I love on also such a deep level that just comes from spending the time to know them, to to be entirely vulnerable and open with them. And that mental intimacy, I would argue that mental intimacy is greater than the physical intimacy that you get from hooking up with someone or like short-term relationships. I've never hooked up. I mean, thankfully I'm still a virgin, if I could even say that. I've done everything but sex, to be honest, but um, I've never hooked up, um, that kind of thing. I've had some short-term relationships, and lust was a part of it. I had a couple of them, but that was prior in my life. Um, but I think just from those experiences, I can say that the 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 fulfillment and the enjoyability of those physical intimacy moments is nowhere near comparable to the the fulfillment of mental intimacy, because mental intimacy is sustainable. It's kind of built for a long-term orientation, right? When you get to know someone so transparently, um, assuming you're not just like trauma dumping or trauma bonding, love bombing, things like that. Um, if it's authentic and it's kind of a loving friendship, right? You can have multiple people in your life that you have that sort of relationship with. You can build an entire friend group, right? I have my Thursday night Bible study guys who we all love each other very deeply and mutually through our, related experiences, through our, you know, vulnerability, through our transparency and things like that. And it's been so mutually beneficial to all of us. And I just, it's just so powerful because romance by nature is like romantic love is meant to be just one person, but you can find that mentally intimate friendship, right, with multiple people, and you can build a whole group around it, which I'm thankful that I have. I have that as part of my support network, of course. Um, but yeah, so the first time, when I quit it cold turkey, I just came up with examples of women who are so beautiful in, they can be beautiful physically, but beautiful also in many other ways, where I give genuine respect to, you know, what they do, right? If it's actresses, then I give respect to them as a piece of art, as a work of discipline in their craft and things like that, to where it genuinely, to me, it would feel disrespectful, and it's just not feasible to reduce them to nudity. Now I understand absolutely that that just seems, you know, very odd and unachievable, because when you're in, as a guy at least, when you're in a headspace of lust, it's you just simply do not think of a woman in that way, or all you can think about is the physical. And I can relate to that. I've been there countless times. But when you have, conscious control over your thought, because really when you're in the lust headspace, I mean, it's just something else is piloting you, right? That's not yourself. I mean, it is. You can't dodge accountability in that way, but that's you're a different version of yourself when you're just in like kind of a lustful headspace versus when you're just in a normal kind of, when you're yourself. And I think a lot of you will understand what I'm saying with that. Um, as nuanced as I worded that, but when you have conscious control over yourself, it's up to you to put in the effort to redefine women in that way, right? I'm not going to tell you that you just have to stop cold turkey right now and immediately redefine how you view women, because that's not really possible for most of us, I would say, not to do immediately. It's a process. And you might not be able to quit cold turkey, right? You might not be so emotionally and passionately motivated by a beautiful girl that you want to get with in high school that you're able to quit cold turkey. Um, so it might be a process, and you might fail, and you might take the very women who you're trying to use as examples of femininity that you want to protect mentally, and you might end up tearing that down and just looking at them nude. Right? That's something Satan will definitely try. If you, at least in my experience, if you follow this kind of a process, Satan, evil, lust, whatever. If you're not Christian, then just your cognitive, lustful headspace will try to convince you to take that woman who you've kind of built up in your mind in a certain definition, and then just reduce her in the same way you've reduced so many other women. I have done that, right? Um, with some women that I tried to turn into, like, kind of the feminine angers I'm talking about. I'm not sure if there's a term to what I'm describing, right? With the, I don't know, feminine angers makes sense to me, so I'll just say that. But it's I mean, it's not an easy process. It's painful, right, to redefine women, and it takes time. Um, Even in my case, right, I quit cold turkey. It was great. Lasted about a year until sexual intimacy came into my dating relationship. High school Christian daters, sexual intimacy, it comes in, and even if you've got yourself convinced that what you're doing is okay, which I did, I had myself very much convinced that it was okay. It's literally just a perpetuation of the lust, right? And at best, you're just stalling um, your return to lust. If you're in that situation of you're dating, and if it's a Christian relationship, even if it's not, I would argue, if you're just in a dating relationship and then sexual intimacy that comes in, if you don't handle it so well and so diligently, then it becomes that slippery slope. Um, Now, I believe that sex and all forms of sexual intimacy are meant to be isolated to marriage, but obviously I'm not going to push it on anybody because I didn't necessarily believe that. I had myself convinced otherwise in high school, even though I was a group leader and things like that. I was in ministry actively believing that sexual intimacy outside of marriage was okay. So I'm not going to say that if you are sexually intimate as a Christian or a non-Christian relationship that you're just cooked, right? It's of course it's you can work around it. It's recoverable, things like that. But when it comes to just the porn part, I don't think that is. I don't think there's any subjectivity there. Um, and if you're not Christian, then I kind of lack a bit of authority, I guess, to tell you what to do, I suppose. But if you do watch my last video, you'll see just what it costs you. And I think porn will negatively affect you regardless of your religious orientation. I don't think porn could ever be a net positive for anyone. I have yet to see an example of that. I don't think there is any. But if you are Christian, then absolutely porn is without a doubt just objectively horrible. Not only are you sinning against yourself and God, but you're sinning against the woman that you're looking at. You're creating a bit of a tie to her, right? Even though you don't actually know the woman at all, right? To know a woman by nothing but her body is worse than not knowing her at all, just objectively, because you create a bit of a tie to her. Um, and, you know, memories, frames kind of will sort of haunt you at night. Um, if you're single, then it's always something that comes to your mind when you're bored, right? It doesn't even have to be late at night, but just middle of the day if you're bored, um, it'll just sneak up on you and things like that. It literally so deeply integrates itself into the way we think and our life, and the way we view women as well, that I don't know, if you let it sit there and you convince yourself that that's just how you are, then you can genuinely just, I mean, you will believe that that's okay, that's just part of you, but it's not. It's an external thing that has so deeply integrated itself into you, but it's still not you. It doesn't define you, right? And that's why I still love everyone and believe everyone is infinitely valuable. Even if to most people they look like some horrible person, like some horrible man who only sees women for their bodies, that guy, right? Maybe there's some 30-year-old dude who for 14, 15 years of his life, for the entire second half of his life, has only used women physically. You have to consider that for the 15 years prior, right? The first 15 years of his life, he didn't. None of us are by nature evil. None of us should be judged and just written off because of the sins we're bound to, because of the negative external things, and not just porn, but this is about porn, the negative external things that have just embedded themselves into us. It's hard. I understand that it's hard to isolate people from those things because it shapes their characteristics. And a lot of people are like, okay, if that's just the person you are, then you're not worth my time, or I don't, love you. And that comes from like a lot of, self-preservation. People that judge in that way, it can be pretty prideful. But as someone that can firsthand relate to it, to be just written off and not given, a chance to heal or a chance to work on it, just because people associate you with whatever you're bound to, it sucks. Um, and that comes from, me having a repentant kind of perspective, towards porn, of course. But I would say it's also equally applicable to those who aren't repentant, right? To the people who are so bound that they have themselves convinced they're right, because I have been there. I was actively leading a Christian dating relationship towards marriage while also having myself entirely convinced that what we were doing was okay. And it wasn't. And I wish we wouldn't have been so good at hiding it. Because we did it in both of our families' houses, right? We didn't have sex, but we did lustful things. We were sexually intimate in both of our families' houses, in the car. I mean, literally on the couch while her family's in the other room. Like, I wish we would have gotten caught. I wish someone would have noticed. I wish we would have gotten called out, because it would have just broken the shroud of illusion that I had convinced myself of. And if you're bound to it, if you're bound to porn, if you think it's just part of who you are, if you've kind of given up on yourself and accepted the perpetuality of it, even if you don't think that you ever are going to get over it, and even if you don't want to, I I still believe that you can, because there's a younger version of yourself who is extremely pure, who didn't even know about, you know, how sex worked and things like that, that I think you could return to a bit of that innocence, right? I think you can be restored to some form of that purity. And if you don't want that, then, well, I mean, I can't make you want that, but I think a lot of us understand that porn is a net negative. And I'm going to tell you that it is going to leave an effect that is permanent. I, fell back into porn after 2.5 years of a beautiful Christian dating relationship. Um, Before she left me, right, it came up, and after, it just spiraled into basically a second, period of addiction. So I'm only 20, but I know for a fact that it's going to be something that I work against for the rest of my life. It's going to try and tear my future marriage apart. And so it's unfair to all of us. For me, it was the age of 15. For a lot of us, it was younger. It's unfair that at that age I signed myself up for a fight that's going to last the rest of my life. It's unfair to all of us that that's the case. But it's always winnable. And it can also work to the good if you let, and I mean, as a Christian, in my opinion, if you let God fight it for you and you just redefine the way you think about yourself in terms of your self-worth, right? Because I think I got to a point with my ex where I was only really worth, the orgasms I could give her when she was on her period and things like that. So, um, if you can redefine the way you think of, women, or if you're a woman, if you redefine the way you think of men, as far far more, there's way more depth to literally everyone than just their bodies, um, and then also yourself as well. Maybe you need to think that about yourself. Maybe you need to think that you're more than just your body. I don't know that that's a common issue among men, but it probably is against women, or among women, that a lot of women have just thought of themselves as nothing but their body, or that they think that their greatest asset, I suppose, or their greatest part is their body. Like, no, there's depth everywhere. Every woman mentally, like, their personality is literally one of a kind. I've seen enough naked bodies to tell you that after enough time they all just blend together. In the images of my mind, it's all kind of just amalgamated, right? I don't remember any one given body that I've seen naked. But I do still remember, like, the personalities and the good moments of, female friends that I've had over time, because those things are actually one of a kind. You could say, bodies are one of a kind, but bodies, there's so many bodies out there that they're just going to be similar, right? There's going to be people, especially if you just reduce it to the sexual parts of the body. I mean, there's only so many sizes and shapes, right? Um, everyone's going to be, there's going to be someone similar to the way everyone looks. But the uniqueness behind someone's personality, the combination of their experiences and their wisdoms and things like that, that's actually what is unique about a person. And that's actually where their value comes from, is the fact that they're the only one that's lived their life. And so I think the most valuable thing you can get from someone is their story, right? Their time and their story. And as I've said before, pursue mental intimacy. Pursue, first friendship. I mean, you could be, I of course I want you to be romantically intimate with your romantic partner, but um, I think it's easiest, if you're single like me, to just find that with friends, right? Build an authentic, loving, set of friendships, um, and that'll help. That'll be a step towards, figuring out what actual love is, the depth behind it. There's so much depth. There's more depth than I could possibly explain, and you don't really get it until you get it, and then you get to a point, and then you get it again, and then you keep rediscovering depth over depth. And at least for me now, I'm at a point where it's like I still do have the two sides, right? I have the side of me that appreciates femininity and things like that, but I also do have the lustful, like, tempted headspace, and that's, like I said, I'm gonna have to wrestle with that forever. But I can successfully wrestle against it with how I've built up, um, my conscious headspace, the headspace I have control over, I would say. Um, where when I am tempted, I can say, you know what, man, I don't believe that. I don't believe that I should reduce that woman to her body, because I know that if I talk to her, if I got to know her, that would be more beautiful than just having to look at her Instagram late at night and doing something that I'm gonna regret, because I have had female friends that I have masturbated to, and it creates a barrier that is, to me, it's irrevocable. I mean, I don't think I'm friends with any more of the girls I knew in high school that I masturbated to. I don't think I've told any of them that I have, because how are you gonna do that, right? I mean, I know there's some friendships that are maybe the secular ones where like that's maybe okay if you set your relationship as a friendship up like that. I can't relate to that personally, but I mean, I'm talking Christian friends, the purest of friendships, where just one late night, she's pretty attractive. Let me see if she's got any pictures from her on the beach on her Instagram. Like, that's all it takes. And then I don't know that there's a way to undo the effect that has on the way you view that woman. That girl moving forward. And so yeah, it's that's been a kind of a barrier for me. That's basically um, disintegrated a couple of multiple of my past friendships with girls my age. Um, and so I really do hope that, I mean, if you're here and you're this far, you definitely agree with me that it's a problem. So now that you've identified it as a problem, I hope my advice slash wisdom slash successes. I mean, most of my wisdom comes from my losses, but some of my successes, I hope it's been helpful. And again, give yourself grace, because at the end of the day, like I said, it's not instant, and you never will be 100% free from the temptation. At least you can beat lust for the rest of your life, but it just means that you're going to have to reject temptation more and more. So in that way, it becomes kind of an escalating battle. But trust me, it is worth it, and it's winnable. But give yourself grace, because you're probably going to fail, and that's okay. And you might be good for months, years, even, and then you'll retrace, relapse, and it'll feel like all of the progress you made was not at all progress at all, or you just undid all the progress you made. But you can't let yourself get in your head about that. You can't believe that, because it's just not true. Sanctification and healing, and just recovering from any addiction. But porn, I would argue, is one of the worst, right? At least the most underrated addiction is a process, and it requires yourself to be gracious towards yourself. It requires you to be merciful, and to understand that you can have the dissonance of knowing it's a problem and hating the sin, um, but still falling into it and relapsing. As long as your heart posture is truly against the sin, as long as you truly want to heal, and want to beat it, and want to redefine the way you think of women and all the things I've described, as long as that is actually what you want, and you're not just saying it as an excuse to perpetuate your addiction to porn, then I truly believe you can beat it. It's just going to take time, and you can't give up. So, I've been good for only 6 weeks, and it's difficult. I woke up early this morning, like, 5 in the morning, and um, I was thirsty. And then after I got water, the first thing that came to mind is, well, can't really go back to bed. What am I going to do? And I'm at a point where it's just a battle of two voices in my head, right? Like two clear, distinct voices. I've got the Holy Spirit, and let me just put this on at the end here. I don't curse. Um, honestly, like really at all. I think like two of my friends ever have heard me curse. Well, three, because I guess I was in a group setting the one time, but that's because a crab pinched my foot at the beach. But um, I don't curse. But when I'm in my head, and when I have that battle of two voices, whenever the thought just crosses my mind, I'm instantly get the F out of here. What the F is that? I'm cursing at the sin in my head. Because I kind of abused cursing in my past relationship as a way to highlight the severity of what I was saying. Of course, my ex didn't perceive it that way, so it was a bad form of communication. But I do that against the sin because when I curse, which I don't do, right? When I curse in my mind, that tells me the severity of it. And that's a good way for me personally just to combat it because I'm like, get the F out of here. Like that kind of a thought about my female friend or whatever the case may be, that's not okay at all. And I won't be having that. Get it out of here, you know. So above all, you're infinitely valuable, and this doesn't define you. You can undo almost all, maybe all. I don't know if it's all. I don't want to say all because I haven't really experienced it yet, but I would say most of the mental, damage. You can basically undo all of the redefining that porn did to your mental. But it's hard, man. It's a lot harder than just letting it slide and living in that. Any noble pursuit is going to be more difficult than the alternative of just letting something be the way it is, right? But it's because we truly believe it's better the harder way. So, you're infinitely valuable, of course, and I love you. And we can we can be pure even if we've defiled ourselves and sinned against ourselves. We can still heal and we can still be pure. And it doesn't mean our love is any less. It doesn't mean our future relationships are going to be permanently, weakened or marred or defined by this addiction. But it is a battle. It's a crazy hard battle. And it's a battle that most men and, maybe some women, I suppose, will will try to fight or will try to take, but they'll lose and then they'll give up. I would say it's for me it's the most difficult thing I've ever done because it's been cyclical now. It's wrapped around and it snuck up on me and it hit me a second time, and it makes me mad beyond communication. That's why I curse at it when I don't curse at anything, but I curse at just this one thing in my mind because porn has done the most damage out of anything to me. It's cost me the absolute most, and it's gonna if I let it, it'll cost me more, so much more in the future, and I don't want to let that happen. And so I hope it doesn't happen to you too. I hope you step up to it and you say that porn has no place in your love. It has no place in your future. It has no place in your future family. It has no place affecting your future wife, making her feel bad about herself, comparing herself to the women you've seen. It has no place on the way you. It just has no place at all. It has no place. Period. That's the end of it. It's unacceptable, and it deserves to die. That addiction deserves to die. And I think once you realize that, then you detach it from yourself because you realize I don't deserve to die, right? But the addiction does, and it needs to, for my sake and the sake of others, the sake of my friends, the sake of my future loved, you know, my significant other and things like that. So we got this. I believe in us. I love you. I love me because there was a time where I was ignorant. I thought of women in such an unhealthy way, and I've already made so much progress. And I can rejoice and be glad in that. Even though I know I might be, 10% of the way there. 6 weeks really isn't a long time. But stack up those little wins, and suddenly the biggest addiction and the biggest thing you'll face in your life becomes achievable. And I hope y'all achieve it. I hope we achieve it, frankly. But thanks for listening. And if you'll meet me here tomorrow, I look forward to it. See y'all then.